everyone, and welcome to Rush Roundtable episode 246. Today, we're going to be talking about the fourth song in the Fear trilogy, Naturally, which is called Freeze. Now, before we get started, I'd like to introduce our panelists real quick. We've got the wonderful Rob, the wonderful Ryder, and Paul. Now,
Saw that one coming.
Now, real quick, if you're so inclined to leave us a donation on Ko-fi, that would be much appreciated. Helps us to keep doing what we're doing. We've also got some phenomenal sponsors down in the description below, so take a look. They've got some wonderful products for you to take a look at. So, without further ado, Freeze, part 4 of the Fear trilogy, starts off with a little instrumental intro, and then we go into verse 1. The city crouches, steaming, in the early morning half-light. The sun is still a rumor, and the night is still a threat. Slipping through the dark streets and the echoes and the shadows, something stirs behind me, and my palms begin to sweat. Any thoughts on the beginning of Freeze?
Definitely very, very creepy lyrics. Starting off the song, there's a very interesting drum and bass groove. Alex comes in with some very like screechy guitar in the background. If I'm counting this right, I believe it's in 6/4. It's either 6/4 or 6/8. I'm not 100%
I thought it
confident.
was 7/4 to start.
7? Oh Christ, I might have been missing a beat. Oh man.
This
It's
is
a very wonky song. This song, if you like your time signatures, this is it.
yeah.
Whatever this is in, 6/4 or 7. I was trying to count both of them earlier today and I couldn't 100% nail it, but it's super nutty. I really, really like it. Um, as the riff starts to chug along, Getty's bass part expands from just root notes into these really, really cool bass chords. They kind of just fly all over the neck. And especially as we get into the chorus, we'll start to see the voicings of these chords start to build a little bit. Um, but it's really cool seeing Alex play this kind of like background textural role while Getty is the one that's really upfront with these big chords. And his vocals are still, with how crazy this, the time signatures and everything still manages to bounce very well off of the rhythmic pattern. So it's a really, really cool intro we got right here with some very interesting lyrics that definitely set the mood for a song that's supposed to be part 4 of a trilogy. Very interesting. The last time we saw part 4 of a trilogy in the Rush pantheon was with Where's My Thing, part 4 of the Gangster of Boats trilogy, as I'm sure we're all incredibly familiar with.
And what happened to
Um,
parts 1 through 3?
well, they were
Where'd they
Where's My
go?
Thing is just so good that they didn't need 1 through 3 on any of the
Oh,
albums. Actually, I think they probably all 3 of them were probably on Caress of Steel and they had to cut them for time. I think that's what they said. Don't quote me on that.
now I'll quote you on that.
All right.
Interesting you brought up the time signature out of the gate because the wonderful Paul Simon, who is hoping to make it today, but unfortunately fell sick, but he left us this quote, which is taken from guitarworld.com, and this was Getty talking. He said, "We were dying to work in some screwed up time signature because we hadn't done that in a while, so we came up with a jam that was in 7. But then I got the idea to digitally form the jam around the song's lyrics. The more I played with it on the computer, the weirder the time got. I decided the bass and guitar should be repetitive and hypnotic, which it is. It's in a sense steady with where the accents are. But I threw out any rules for the time signature. I shaped the time of each verse section to the number of beats I needed to fit in the vocal properly. That's why it's hard to count that song. There aren't any rules as to when a beat is dropped or added. So maybe the
Hmm.
answer is there is no time signature. It is all of the time signatures.
Some great late game prog expertise from Rush coming in here.
Yeah,
That's
no
real
kidding.
nutty.
Mm.
And at least to me, it doesn't feel crazy prog. Like there are certain prog songs where it's like, oh yeah, that's in a really weird time signature. It feels weird. This doesn't feel weird. It's still got a good groove to it, I think.
Yeah, it's like they have that knack of making odd time seem very natural, very flowing, and
Right.
has a feel to it, which you wouldn't associate an odd time with a good feel. It's not easy to dance to first off, but you could probably dance to this one. But they have that ability to really, put that out there, and they just have it mastered to such a level that, you know, trying to count it just feels so natural and smooth. You know, you can count four through the whole thing, and you probably would land pretty well, regardless of the odd time. You know, so but they have that ability and that knack, and it really fits the song so well because the lyrics aren't really comforting. Let's put it that way.
No.
They don't feel very settled. You know, so but the time signatures feel like opposite of that. It feels kind of more, feels a bit more, I guess, effortless the way they do it. Doesn't really perceive. You don't really get an emotional tightness or you feel anxious about it.
Right. What's
That
the
to me
line?
really
uh, I think calm and simple beat that you can dance to or something like that.
Exactly.
there you go.
Shout out
Are you?
Nick Halley.
I was gonna say, are you quoting Superconductor?
No,
No, no, no.
no.
I wouldn't do that. Song of 7/8.
The whole steady beat, like making it seem like the time signatures aren't really like acting all crazy, really reminds me of Kid Gloves bouncing really between 5 and 4 most of the time, but
Mm.
making that seem so effortless the entire time you barely even notice.
I think that's
Okay.
their genius. That's their genius. They just flow to all these time signatures, and you can't really notice until you really try to start counting it as it's going on. Then you're like, then you get all mixed up. But just listening it to it, not trying to count it, it just seems effortless.
It's easy to
And
listen
that's
to.
at that point they've been together 30 years, so for them it's probably just you know.
Yeah. So we move into the first chorus, I suppose you could call it a chorus. Sometimes I freeze until the light comes. Sometimes I fly into the night. Sometimes I fight against the darkness. Sometimes I'm wrong and sometimes I'm right. So I think this right here highlights the two first responses people think of when it comes to fear, and that's fight or flight, right? It says it sometimes I fight, sometimes I fly. And Neil is saying, well, wait, there's a third. What if you freeze and you have no reaction other than having no reaction and you can't do anything? And then he asks the question, in a sense, he's asking the question, sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right. Which of these three is right? Who knows?
Yeah, it depends.
And so as we come out of that sort of chorus section, the song really opens up as an arrangement instrumentally. It gets really big going into what I guess you could call a bridge. And the lyrics are coiled for the spring, or caught like a creature in the headlights, into a desperate panic or a tempest of blind fury, like a cornered beast or a conquering hero. Quite a set of lines.
Yeah. In this section, this is where the Getty's bass chords really hit their big moment and just really fill out the arrangement in the song. There's even a little bit of Getty ooh-ahs going on in the background, which I think is really cool. Yeah, this is a really, really cool moment in the song. I love just how big the arrangement gets right here. Once again, the lyrics are super, super cool. I love just Getty's just how he weaves through the whole thing with the lyrics. I think it's really, really cool. And then just how they transition back into the verse after this. It's just another really smooth back into that chugging pattern. Really, really cool part right here, I think.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, there's multiple tracks of guitar. There might be multiple tracks of bass, and there's definitely multiple tracks of vocals. I caught it for the first time while I was listening today. I don't know if it's an acoustic guitar or, I mean, the liner notes credit Alex for a mandola, which I think Getty said he used on How It Is, but it almost sounds like that kind of thing during this part of the song. And if you listen with headphones, it's panned pretty heavy to the left. And it's definitely something acoustic, and it just sounds so good and so odd for a song in an album that otherwise is super heavy. But it fits so well, especially when you're trying to open up the instrumentation this way. I think it works great.
I think I know what part you're talking about, like right as the section opens up. Call me crazy, but in the comments, if you guys hear this? Does anyone hear the motif from the opening of Red Barchetta in this part? Like as it starts to build up, I can hear dun 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 dun, dun. And maybe not those exact notes, but that pattern, I can hear it within the back of this little section. Listen to this song again with headphones. I think they purposefully tease Red Barchetta in this part of the song. This might just be me like overhearing things, or just it might be a similar chord structure and just, whatever's going on here. But I definitely hear something in this little section that sounds like Red Barchetta, and I think it might be that mandolin instrument that you're talking about. Really, really cool, especially considering the next album is going to open up with a reference to hemispheres, and just throughout the rest of Rush's discography, we're going to get a lot of allusions to their past. And I think this is a really, really cool. If this is the Red Barchetta riff, I think this is a really, really sweet way to hide it in a song, like add it in as a little like textural element in the like post chorus where no one's going to be looking. That's so cool.
And
Well, it's funny you
now,
mention
from
that.
now on, when I listen to this song, when I get to that section, I'm going to think of Ryder and say, okay, where's that section that he talks about Red Barchetta? You know what I mean? It'll come up.
It
It'll
might
keep
be
coming
it
up.
might be some total insanity on my end, but I swear I hear them referencing Red Barchetta in this section of the song.
Yeah, there's definitely quoting. I think Ryder's onto something because like you think of, moving pictures, Witch Hunt is part of the Fear trilogy. So,
Mhm.
and Alex's guitar riff is harmonics in the beginning. So after, Geddy and Neil or do their thing in the beginning, Alex comes in with harmonics, which is played more towards the nut to get those harmonics that he gets. So I would not be a bit surprised that they harken back to that, saying they haven't played with odd times in a while. Alex's solo in Red Barchetta is in seven. There's parts in five. So I would not be a bit surprising that he's quoting that. Would not I would not disagree with that. So it's a good
That'd be
catch.
cool. I'll have to go back and listen to it that way. So we come out of that section back into another verse that's, like Ryder said, a great transition out of that big open section into the driving, hypnotic section of the verse. The lyrics go, "The menace threatens, closing, and I'm frozen in the shadows. I'm not prepared to run away, and I'm not prepared to fight. I can't stand to reason or surrender to a reflex. I will trust my instincts or surrender to my fright." Again, what a set of lines. I mean, they come at you kind of fast as the song is progressing, so it's easy to kind of just listen and not think anything of them, but reading them out loud is like, wow,
Mhm.
that's some heavy stuff.
They're not the most cheery lyrics he's ever written.
No.
Um, it's basically all about freezing when you're confronted with a situation, what to do, what not to do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm frozen in the shadows. I'm not prepared to run away, but I'm not prepared to fight. I'm not prepared to fly. I'm not prepared. Like it's just a constant freeze.
Yeah.
Which in some cases might be the scariest of the three, right? Like, if you're having some kind of nightmare and something jumps out at you, and because you're sleeping, you can't do anything. And that's, or like you have sleep paralysis.
Mm.
And people talk about how scary that is, where you can't run, you can't fight, you're just stuck there looking. And, um, these set of lyrics really capture, am I going to trust my instincts and fight or fly, run away? Or am I going to surrender to my fright, which is the freezing, which is, like I said, maybe the scariest of the three.
It's almost some like twisted bastardization on free will, wherein, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. This is you being stripped of your ability to choose, and your action is not doing anything. That's at least and I'm sure it's not like a direct parallel, but I kind of link it back to how free will puts such a big emphasis on the power of choice and the power of decision. And this song deals with the fear of not being able to decide, not having the correct information to act the best, and like everything that comes with that. Like I'm sure anyone who deals with anxiety or struggles with overthinking probably is reading these lyrics to the song and they're like, oh my God, I definitely empathize with like all of this. And yeah, I think too, when it comes down to like fighting flying or freezing, like, you know, the freeze is definitely one of the scariest of the three, and I would probably say it probably is the scariest because, you know, you can't do anything.
Yeah, it's almost like analysis paralysis. Like, how do you deal with the situation? You compare it to something else. Neil's own circumstance that he was, sort of mentioning throughout the record, his dealing with the situations, what he was going through and how he dealt with those things. Get on the bike and ride, sort of soothe the baby soul, keep moving, And like Ryder just said, like, okay, now I can't decide, like, what's the menace? What's the menace that's threatening me here? It's closing in. I can't, I'm in the dark. I can't, I'm frozen there. I can't do anything, So Ryder hit that point really well, where it's like, it's that fear of like now you're stuck. Like that's the worst thing to have is when you're stuck because you don't feel like you have an option to get out of whatever the circumstance is, which is that's part of the fear, I guess, is like, oh crap, like what do I do about this, So it's an interesting part of the song because he mentions the menace. So what is the menace? Is it the autobiographical part of what he's dealing with? Is it a memory coming up that he has to confront? Like, how do I sort that out? So there's too many things to juggle through here. It's like it's a great part of the song because it's like the plot is thickening in the story of this particular song. Like, and where does it go?
And that analysis paralysis might be a really big part of this because the next couple lines say, I'm not prepared to run away, I'm not prepared to fight. He's not saying I react to it. He's saying it's something I expected to be prepared for. And I wasn't, now I had to analyze this and I don't know what to do. So it's not always, something jumps out at you and it's like, oh crap. Sometimes it's I didn't prepare this way and I'm frozen that way. So I mean, multiple layers. As always, multiple layers. So we go into the next chorus, and it is the same set of lines as the first chorus, but they're in a little bit of a different order. So it goes, sometimes we freeze until the light comes, sometimes we're wrong, and sometimes we're right. Sometimes we fight against the darkness, sometimes we fly into the night. So the only one that stayed in the same place was that first line, sometimes we freeze, which I guess is sort of interesting. Again, highlighting the title of the song and the point of the song, I guess.
Yeah, I think I like how it goes in the first chorus. Sometimes I freeze, and then went out into the we part. So it's like that universality of his lyric that, well, it's not just me. We all go through this. We all have this part of like, the light comes is like the light is like the solution, to like maybe the problem we weren't figuring out, but all of a sudden it clicks. The light comes on, and now we can, kind of deduce and analyze perhaps like, well, how do we get stuck in the first place? And what did we do to get out of it? So I think that's kind of a cool part of the tune where he flips it around where he offers the solution, coming back to that type of theme that he puts into these lyrics from time to time, where it's like there's a solution, that he's offering here, like, you know, and we could be wrong about that part, and we just have to go at it and try to see if this thing that we deduced down to like a solution to a problem is it going to work or not. Am I right about this movement, or now there's movement involved here? I think that's kind of where he's kind of aiming the lyrics here. There's some kind of movement now. We're kind of unstuck. We're unfrozen, perhaps in this section.
Interesting, because that brings us to the next bridge section that goes, blood running cold, mind going down into a dark night of a desperate panic or a tempest of blind fury, like a cornered beast or a conquering hero. And this set of lyrics starts very dark, uh, hopeless almost. And it repeats the set of lines from the first bridge of, desperate panic, tempest of blind fury, not good things. But it ends with, or a conquering hero. And like Rob said, maybe we're getting unstuck. Maybe we're getting some motion. And he ends this section of the lyrics with, or a conquering hero. So again, there's a way out if we can conquer this state of being frozen.
I think musically getting into this part, there's more time. There's like a more of a musical setup before the bridge begins. Like previously, it was like they kind of just got right into it. There wasn't like a build up, you know. So now I think just even with Neil's drum fills, they get a little more expansive. He's a little more active in that regard. So it's kind of like a prelude, kind of setting up this next section. So I think musically, we have a bit more of a drawn out type of scene. The motion part is kind of coming in where they're doing more musically to reflect lyrically what's happening next, perhaps. Just my opinion.
Just your opinion. Who asked, Rob? Who asked?
I don't know. I tried.
I'm kidding. Kidding. So then we continue into an instrumental break that lasts about a minute or so with some lyrics sort of thrown in. And so Getty described this. He says the middle section is a bass and guitar jam, which we left virtually as is, as in he didn't go to the computer to digitally shuffle around some beats or add or drop anything. So I don't recall what time signature it's in. I don't think it's in 4, but either way, he wasn't adding and dropping beats digitally before they got to this section.
And continuing in Vapor Trail's fashion, there's no guitar solo.
And there
Oh,
wasn't
no.
one added with the remix. They left it as just a jam, unlike Stealing Unlimited, or I guess Earthshine kind of got one too. But
I can imagine a solo in this song, though. Just the way the song is structured. I don't know where you'd put it.
Yeah,
It wouldn't.
I
It
do
would
kind of
seem.
like the jam.
It would seem kind of out of place. But
keeping it as a jam sort of keeps the momentum going, I think.
mm.
And
Yeah.
so there's some lyrics that come in this break and kind of out of the break. There's lyrics. Sometimes I freeze, sometimes I fight, sometimes I freeze until the light comes, sometimes I fly into the night, into the night, into the night. So it sort of wraps with those chorus lyrics again going on throughout that instrumental section.
Yeah, and even the range as Get gets close to the end of the song, his range goes way up there, you know, which is he was pretty subdued through the whole tune. But now at the end here, it's like I don't know, I don't know if it feels triumphant, but it feels like there's elation to that high register that he gets to, you know.
Yeah, even with just like the non-lyrical sections that he's singing, just like the O's that he's singing at the end of this, they're up there,
Yeah.
especially for, later Getty. They're pretty high.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is pretty neat about this song is the way it ends, because they could fade out. They could do like a jam fade out like they did on Secret Touch. They could do a big ending like Limelight. They could do a lot of things, but they go back to that hypnotic, syncopated beat they've got going, and then they just hit one of them and stop, which I think is the perfect way to end a song that's all about freezing, is by just hitting a note and freezing, and that's the end of the song. I think it's great.
And you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then it's over.
Yeah. Move on. I can't imagine that song fading out or like it's just like it was designed. Like I said, you freeze, you just stop, and everything just moves on.
Mhm. I like how the ending too begins to flow into the next song. Not to spoil next week's episode, but Out of the Cradle.
What comes next?
The last song on Vapor Trails. Actually, I can't believe it. We're almost done with Vapor Trails. But yeah, just the super abrupt bam, and then just little dun dun dun. I think it's a really cool moment on the album sequencing wise. But yeah, super cool outro. I love the crazy vocal layering that happens. Getty flying all over the place on the fretboard. It's insane. It's crazy. And I think honestly, this section right here, I think probably best encapsulates the mental space of like freezing and fear. At least for me, when I tend to get frozen, I get very like overwhelmed and I have a lot of like things racking around in my brain, and just the amount of thoughts that are bouncing through is what freezes me in place and is like, okay, well, which of these things am I going to decide to actually do? And with everything happening around, this to me is like the best depiction of like the anxiety part of freezing in the song. I think it does a very good job of like honestly being a little overwhelming for the listener. And then just how suddenly it just all stops right there. Super, super cool musical moment and just really great way to end the song.
For sure. Now, throughout our coverage of Vapor Trails, we've been talking about the tarot cards. And so for Freeze, it is the Eight of Swords. Is that showing up?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Marvelous. So it's the Eight of Swords, right? That's what
Mhm.
this is.
Correct.
Cool. Rob, you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so I'll read you a little bit of something about the card. The card that represents freeze in the tarot is the Eight of Swords. It shows the moment when the individual realizes that he has arguments to defend, his ideas, recognizing his weapons, his capabilities, and losing the fear of facing certain situations that he feared. It speaks of struggle, of the use of competence, of the effort to free himself through an inner evolution resulting from his mental activities. As a life lesson, it suggests change, abandoning habits and ways of thinking and feeling, setting out on a life with new sequences. There you have it.
But what does it mean, Rob?
Well, I think the last paragraph is the thing. It's like the idea of change, abandoning habits, finding ways of thinking, new ways of thinking, and setting out on a new life. Basically, once you realize you could change your thought pattern, you can unblock yourself and you can move to the next stage of what your life is, what life has laid out before you, so to speak. So you kind of encounter that direction. You get a new direction from the way you break through your habits and change thought processes. So when you change your thought process, you can arrive at your solution, and then therefore your direction becomes clear. That's my interpretation. So
Well said. Losing the fear of facing certain situations. I guess that is, at least it's not totally hopeless, right? We're a conquering hero in this song. We end as a conquering hero. This is one of my favorite songs on Vapor Trails. I adore this song as I adore the album. I will never forgive the fine what's the channel that does uh the best and worst that we were on? Oh, what's that
Oh,
good?
uh, Contrarians?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Contrarians. Great channel. If you don't watch them, you should watch them. They do some great stuff. But they were doing like worst Rush songs or something like that. And the entire panel had to agree on naming five or something like that. And Freeze was on there, and I will never forgive everyone who let Freeze stay on there because it is nowhere near the worst Rush song. I think it is among the best. It is a fantastic song. So
I'll
just
have to
throwing
go
that out
find
there. It's a
I have to go find
disgrace.
I have to go find that episode now.
mhm.
Curious what the other songs were.
Our very own Ryan Murphy let it happen, and I'm not happy about it.
Come on, Ryan.
Terrible. Well, any other closing remarks on the fourth part of the Fear trilogy?
I wish they played all of the Fear trilogy live on Vapor Trails tour. Massive
Um,
missed
that
opportunity.
would have been
And I don't think
sick.
this song would have been super hard to replicate live.
You think or you don't think?
I don't think it would have been super
Oh,
hard to
okay.
replicate live. I mean, I get it. It's a wonky time signature, and especially with the beat skipping and stuff, but I feel like they could have counted it out. I mean,
Or they
I
could
think it could have
have
been
lip
done.
I
synced it.
mean,
Yeah, they could have totally just had a backing track the entire time. That would have been
Right,
super Rush.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been super, super cool to see him play through the entire trilogy and then add Freeze on top of it to bank it out.
yeah, yeah.
Or screw it, do it all backwards, whatever. They released it in reverse order. Why not rerun it in the whole reverse order? I don't know.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool. But yeah, unfortunately, one of the Rush songs that they didn't get to play live, and really wish they did.
Well, maybe in our next life.
Mhm.
But anyways, folks, this has been episode 246 for Freeze. Leave a like, comment. What do you think of Freeze? Do you think it's one of the worst Rush songs? I certainly don't, but I'll read the comment and tell you why you're wrong if you think you do. So subscribe to the channel. We got Out of the Cradle coming next, I believe, and then we'll have some miscellaneous episodes coming before we get to Snakes and Arrows. And that's the second. Are we doing feedback? Maybe feedback first, and then Snakes and Arrows. But either way, we're coming up on the last few Rush albums. That's crazy to even think about. But anyway, subscribe so you can keep track of the next videos that are coming out. Again, if you feel so inclined to leave a donation at Ko-fi, that would be great. Check out our sponsors, and we'll see y'all next time.